Who would have thought my shriveled heart could have recovered greenness?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Read Me Something You Love. Today, I'm really honoured to be speaking to Jane Davis, who is the founder and director of the Reader organisation, who are doing some incredible things in terms of bringing people together and bringing individuals back to themselves through the act of reading aloud in a group, responding to texts in a way that is both accessible and heartfelt, something entirely unique, I think, to this organisation. I'm very fortunate myself to be involved in the reading revolution, as they call it. Full disclosure here, I'm a card-carrying reader organisation convert, and their ethos lies at the heart of this project, summarised simply as Read Me Something You Love. What I love about the chat we had is how relevant Jane makes George Herbert feel for 21st century us, for our timeless and yet also historically particular worriment. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did.
The flower. How fresh, O Lord, how sweet and clean are thy returns, even as the flowers in spring to which, besides their own demean, the late past frosts tributes of pleasure bring. Grief melts away, like snow in May, as if there were no such cold thing. Who would have thought my shriveled heart could have recovered greenness? It was gone, quite underground, as flowers depart to see their mother root when they have blown, where they together, all the hard weather, dead to the world, keep house unknown. These are thy wonders, Lord of power, killing and quickening, bringing down to hell and up to heaven in an hour, making a chiming of a passing bell. We say amiss, this or that is. Thy word is all, if we could spell. Oh, that I once past changing were, fast in thy paradise, where no flower can wither. Many a spring I shoot up fair, offering at heaven, growing and groaning thither. Nor doth my flower want a spring shower, my sins and I, joining together. But while I grow to a straight line, still upwards bent, as if heaven were mine own, thine anger comes and I decline. What frost to that? What pole is not the zone where all things burn, when thou dost turn and the least frown of thine is shown? And now in age I bud again. After so many deaths I live and write. I once more smell the dew and rain and relish versing. O my only light, it cannot be that I am he on whom thy tempests fell all night. These are thy wonders, Lord of love, to make us see we are but flowers that glide, which, when we once can find and prove, thou hast a garden for us, where to bide. Who would be more, swelling by store, forfeit their paradise by their pride?
Thank you. So, this feels very much, certainly when we begin, it feels very much like a song of praise, a poem of praise. And I was really interested to see how you would read it. And I noticed that you gave it quite a low key reading. It wasn't a jubilant, how fresh, oh Lord, how sweet and clean. Yeah. I was just wondering, how does that first verse sit with you? That sort of the praising of the Lord.
Well, to me, the main thing that's happening in that first verse, I agree, it's praising, and it's as he says, it's a return. But to me, the big thing in that verse is the grief. Grief melts away like snow in May, and I think when you come to the poem after having had grief or hard times or sadness or a period of something else, and you come back to life, you are glad of the life, and it is a wonderful thing, but it's as if that huge experience that preceded it, the sad bit, that's the main. So that's why I think nearly always read it in that way, as if I'd be a bit tentative. I feel that the real high point comes a bit later on in the next verse. So I love, who would have thought my shriveled heart could have recovered greenness? But it's still informed by the fact that you've been really, really down, isn't it? And really thought you would never come back. It's as if perhaps the high is almost dependent on, and certainly deeply related to, the low.
And I suppose you're still carrying some of that sense of the low with you, because you know later on, it's certainly in the third verse, there's this idea of that it could come back any time.
It could,
Lord of power, you know, you have the power, this capricious, unpredictable Lord, to bring me down to hell and up to heaven.
And they are such massive extremes, aren't they? That if you were a person who suffered those either in a kind of a permanent way, as a sort of pattern of your life, or just as somebody who might have had one very big terrible time, you don't forget them. And for people who are living with ups and downs, the ups are fantastic, but I don't think anybody forgets the depth of what, you know, it's not an accident that he calls it hell. Killing and quickening. Modern readers might not know that quickening means bringing to life, as in when a baby quickens in the womb when it moves for the first time. So both sort of being destroyed and being brought literally back to life. They're massive extremes. So I suppose, I don't know, I guess I imagine some of the language does the joy for you. The really joyful bit is, and now in age I bud again. I can't remember what verse number that is, but it's about 7 probably.
Yeah. And now in age I bud again, after so many deaths I live and write.
Yes, this lovely, isn't it? Yeah. And that's where I feel the real. So if I was playing a musical instrument, that's where I'd want to put the joy and brio and a bit of loud cymbals maybe in, or the trumpets. But it takes him a while to get there. It's funny, it begins with and as if he's been talking it through. He's been talking about being underground and coming back and taken up, and he's remembering how terrible it is to be picked up to heaven and thrown down to hell. And then suddenly, and now in age, he's back where he is and just thinking, nope, I am actually alive and I'm happy and I'm creative, I'm able to work. I have that in my study wall, that verse, just that verse. And now in age I bud again, after so many deaths I live and write.
And what does that do for you when you see that on a obviously on a frequent basis?
I think it's just absolutely marvellous that you could be almost destroyed and yet come back to your creativity. And anybody who engages in any kind of creative activity, writing or painting or music or maybe even sport, I don't know, might know that there are kind of patterns, and when you lose it, I suppose depending on how important it is to you, it's a terrible, terrible loss. It is like yourself. So it's wonderful that when he comes back, and buds again. Let's think of the little sticks that are out there at the moment in this January snow with tiny buds that are going to be the flowers in summer. After so many deaths, I live and write, as if he's got to accept that this pattern is going to keep happening. But how wonderful to, so simple, once more smell the dew and rain. It's like, it's even raining. He's glad. And relish versing. Which is lovely, because relish is a big, happy word. But don't forget, oh my only light, it cannot be that I am he on whom thy tempests fell all night. He's battle-scarred. So I think when I see those two lines, I feel it's worth summoning the courage to be brave, because things can come back.
And I suppose it's almost, I sort of read it a little bit like a little, kind of almost like a little missive you send to your future self, when your future self is going to be felled in this way by these tempers. As you know, invariably you will be at some point in the future. It's almost saying, try not to forget that
this can happen.
You passed through it last time, and you could pass through it. You will pass through it again. There's that sense of hope.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't do. It's what's wonderful is the complexity of not doing away with the suffering. It's not like trying to cheer up or to resolve it or to get through it. It just knows it and accepts it. It's not going to change. I think that's got really interesting connotations for us in our age, where we think of, we discuss the kind of problems he's suffering in terms of mental health. He wouldn't have. He thought they were problems of, I don't know, doubt
soul,
or love or God or something. But for us, that experience would be a mental health experience. And it's as if, because it's sadly connected to those words, mental health, somehow that, we need a new vocabulary. That's not good enough. Because if you're stuck with that pattern and you're never going to get better, it would be better to call it something else and just to live with, the pattern and be glad of. And now in age I bud again. In age, years have been passed.
And maybe also, I suppose, to understand it as he's trying to do in terms of the natural world. I love this line where he's talking about his shriveled heart. Yeah. And he describes it as being as a going quite underground, as flowers depart to see their mother root. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what he means by that.
I think he's talking about, if gardeners will know, he's talking about what perennial plants do, which is they die down in the autumn and winter. So I'm thinking of things like delphiniums, say, beautiful huge blue spires. I don't know if you know them. So in the winter there's no sign of them. There might be a bit of slush that slugs have eaten on them, but probably nothing. But they're under there and they're still alive, but you can't see them. And then in the spring they will come back as little tiny shoots, and then they grow into these amazing, beautiful things. So English gardening is totally built on perennials. And then, he knew them, and he would know from his garden that's how it is. So you can't see them; they've gone. But if you dug them up, there would be a living, dormant root under there.
That's the word. That's the word that I had in my head. Dormant. Kind of a dormancy. So that when you are in that very, very low state, state where you feel there's no movement, there is something is very, very slowly working and shifting.
Because it's lovely, the sort of domestic language of it. Who would have thought my shriveled heart could have recovered greenness? It was gone, quite underground. But it was gone feels like the end of the world. But then quite underground gives it a lovely, almost like bed doesn't it? Like a flower bed, but a place you can just retreat into to rest as flowers depart to see their mother root when they have blown, meaning once they've dropped their petals blown, where they together, all the hard weather, dead to the world, keep house unknown. So that, as if something in you is, it may even be the smallest sort of simplest of bodily movements, your blood is still pumping, you are still breathing, keeping house, housekeeping, the basic things that keep everything ticking over from day to day, still happening, but invisible. The world doesn't know about it.
And I suppose you don't know about it either.
No, because you've kind of gone into unconsciousness, haven't you, of you know. And yet the flowers, as flowers depart to see their mother root when they have blown, where they together, as if they are almost like a family or something. All the hard weather, and you think of all the snow on the ground and above, where those tender perennials could not survive above ground, but below ground they can.
I mean, it's interesting, he introduces the word of mother, and the mother is clearly here feels very nurturing and very welcoming. And then later on, where you get to the point where he talks about growing in a straight line upwards, and then the anger comes, that feels kind of coming from a father.
Yes.
Or is that just me projecting there?
No, I think you're right. I think it's coming from he calls it in the previous verse,
Lord.
Lord of power.
Yeah.
And it's as if you've got that mother in Mother Earth feeling of something that simply accepts you and has a kind of power underground there, but you're not aware of it as an active force. It's just accepting, isn't it? But then these are thy wonders, Lord of power, killing and quickening, etc. So that power is a funny word. And then I think you're right, it's when he's growing in the straight line, but while I grow to a straight line, still upwards bent as if heaven were mine own. So trying to be good, make a good life, and off he sets. Thy anger comes and I decline. You do feel it's almost like a clip round the ear, isn't it? It feels like that. What frost to that?
I felt really sad reading that line, because the sadness was thinking of children. You know, the child's impulse is to grow and to discover and to look upwards for some sort of reciprocity and love. Yeah. And then the anger comes, and the anger often comes, as we know, from a parental figure, and that can be hugely damaging. Yeah.
And it does feel scary in the poem, doesn't it? At this point, whereas thy anger comes and I decline, what frost to that? What pole is not the zone where all things burn, when thou dost turn, and the least frown of thine is shown? It doesn't sound like God of love or anything. I mean, it does feel terrifying.
It's angry and dismissive, isn't it? So it's not just the anger, it's the dismissiveness, it's the not taking care, not noticing, all of those things that, of course...
I don't know what the frown... I thought the turn was almost like turning to you, so it would be like the turn, but with this frown of, what are you doing, George Herbert? You again. It is really frightening, and you wouldn't want to experience whatever it is he does experience when those moments come, and yet they go away as well. He takes it on himself in a way. I mean, he says, oh, my only light. That's the same person as Lord of power. It cannot be that I am he on whom thy tempests fell all night. As if he seems to take something like a kind of responsibility for the feelings. I am he. And I think you're right to pick up on that mother and father sort of stuff that's in the poem. But in another way, I think he wants to posit an idea of God that is almost inhuman. That's why he uses the word power. It's like suprahuman, it's beyond us, it's incomprehensible, and sometimes it's agonizing. And somehow that balances the returns, that it's how fresh, O Lord, how sweet and clean are thy returns. It's interesting you picked up the word turn before, and now looking back at the first verse, returns. It's two faces of
the
this
turning away and then the turning back.
Right. Both of them. Sometimes they're terrifying, sometimes they're lovely.
And depression, I suppose, is you could say, is a kind of a turning away from life. Yeah. Perhaps. Yeah. A kind of a dormancy. Yeah. And then when we come out of it, it's a returning to. Yeah.
And other things that happen to people about, I think of things like people with obsessive thoughts who can't get them out, or voices. So when those things attack you, or it seems as if they attack you, I don't know, I'm not talking from direct experience, but only from people I know, they are terrifying, or they can be terrifying, and it's hard to remember. It seems to be hard for people to remember that you've got through this before, and you will get through it another time. And I think that poem could be really, really useful in for people in experiencing those kind of things.
I mean, do you find when you are struggling that to have a poem that sort of says to you, it's going to be okay, helps? Because sometimes when people are struggling and another person or a piece of literature or whatever it is says, but it's going to be okay, you almost sort of want to say, it's not going to be okay, and I don't want you to tell me it's going to be okay, frankly.
I think I would read this for the lines, grief melts away like snow in May, which I have most of this poem in memory. I could probably recite it to myself while walking, and those two lines would probably help in some way, just like a kind of weird incantation,
sort of a mantra. That's what I was thinking of. Just to kind of focus
away.
The mind that's whirring and whirling,
because they have such a lovely short rhythm, don't they? And it feels as if it's going to melt away. You know how. So that might help me. And I think in a way, although other bits you might, if you were in a really bad way, you might want to pass over. If you weren't having any returns at the moment, it wouldn't feel sweet and clean. But to read the whole poem might remind you that he has been down to hell, and just knowing that somebody is there, goes there a lot, could be helpful. I don't think I would read the whole poem in a bad way. I think I would just latch on to some bits of it.
I like the way when you read The Grief Melts Away that you included in there quite a longish pause between the words, so almost sort of so that you could almost get a sense of the melting, and also a sense that actually it takes time for grief to melt away. It wasn't just like grief melts away. It was grief, pause, melts, pause, away. There was that time element built into it.
Because I think yes, I like reading it like that, because the rest of the poem is very conversational. How fresh, O Lord, how sweet and clean are thy returns. And it reasonably fast. But when you come to that and you see it on the page in two very short lines, and you do just think they need time and they need space around them.
And what about the last three lines? I sort of get to them, and my mind struggles to make kind of put them into something that I understand.
I don't like the last verse very much. I sort of pass over it quickly, but really I think he's saying something like, we are but flowers that glide. So in other words, what flowers are, they come, they blossom, their petals fall and they die away. If they're perennials, they come back. If they're annuals, they don't, and so on. Flowers, they flower and then they drop, don't they? I love that. I love the fact that it's like that it's as if flowers are quite flaunting and colourful and beautiful and creative and marvellous, but they die. So in this verse, I think he's saying, we are but flowers that glide. We don't want to remember that. We want to think we're permanent, fixed, consciousnesses. And then when once we can find and prove, there has to garden for us. So there is a place in which we will be permanent, fixed, immortal, in that garden for George Herbert, where to bide. So there is a place where we can be, but we're not there yet. And who would be more swelling through store, forfeit their paradise by their pride.
Yes,
So
those are the lines that I struggle with.
yeah, so if you want more than this, if you want to be more than temporary and very, very fragile, you do that by shoring yourself up through things, store.
As in storage, right?
Yeah, as in objects that you can... I've got 79 pictures, 45 CDs, 3 sofas, and a house that cost £500,000, right? That's store, that's stuff. So if you swell yourself up, your pride, your sense of security, I think, yes, here I am, I've got all this stuff, it anchors me to the planet, it makes me secure, forfeit their paradise by their pride. It's like in the other poem when he had all that, enticed by all the lovely household stuff of the church and so on. That's not it.
But it's quite a paradox, isn't it? Because he's sort of saying, well, don't get too attached to this worldly
to this
store.
Stuff. Yeah.
But if you don't get too attached to this stuff that you see as security, you'll get the ultimate security, which is this garden, heaven.
Yeah.
But that's also a search for a kind of, a sort of enduring security, which actually we know is not available to us.
We know, but I don't know. I don't think he would have thought that. I suppose he would have thought that would be heaven, and that would be what you would attain after death, right? So if you can live well, and if you like, humbly, and without loads of stuff, and live a kind of inner life, which is what he tried to do for himself, and the poems show him doing that, then that might attain you heaven. I mean, I don't know what I do with that, because I don't believe in heaven. I don't think it... I think I would like to live as if I did believe in the possibility of heaven, and was, even though I didn't believe in it. I think that might make me try harder to live a good life, and the good life in itself might be worth living. I'll try and remember that next time I want some stuff.
Well, I feel like you're trying pretty hard already. I can't imagine how you could possibly try harder than you're already trying. But there you go.
Yeah,
maybe we all feel we can always.
Oh, the acquisition of stuff. Yes, look at this.
Now, this is a poem. I realise we've literally got a minute or two, but I mean, this is a poem that obviously it's a poem you've read a number of times. You've done it, I imagine, with a lot of groups. What is there any particular line that jumps out, or that has jumped out for you freshly or anew today, specifically today in this reading?
I'm still incredibly moved by grief melts away like snow in May. So it's not new, but I think the wonderful thing about reading poems is it is new every time if you're reading in a live way. I think I'm always moved by it cannot be that I am he on whom thy tempest fell all night. The difference between the person you are by day when you're more or less in control of yourself and the person you sometimes can be at night if you're suffering insomnia or anxiety. They're very different. And I think I find it very moving that he's sort of almost like looking at himself, and tempests have been on him all night, and he's as if he's bedraggled, and yet he feels different. It cannot be that I am he, and yet it is. I like relish versing as well, and it makes me wish that I wrote more often.
That was one of your New Year's resolutions, wasn't it?
Oh dear.
Write more, relish more. This is what happens when you have a blog. Everyone knows what your New Year's resolutions are.
I know. Oh well, I'll come back to you on that one.
Well, thank you for reading.
Thanks for inviting me. That was a pleasure. Enjoyed it. And now in age, I bud again.